Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today as part of our online community, listening online via our podcast. We're so excited that you joined us in this amazing season, this Heart for the House season, as we get to really be inspired and encouraged with the vision over these next few weeks. So hey, sit back, listen, enjoy, and really prayerfully consider right now the part that you can play.
We love Norwich. We've had a connection here over many, many years. And firstly, I just want to say thank you to John and Chantel. We've got to know them better these last few years. You've got some incredible pastors. They are pioneering a way. They are risk takers. They are faith-filled. They're people of integrity. And we really appreciate you guys. Thank you. I also want to welcome my wife who's with me, Angie. We've been married 33 years. Not quite as many. She was 12 and I was 14. Honestly, whoa, not when we got married, when I first asked her out in Sunday school. And guess what? Her mum said no. And up to the wedding day, her mum was still saying no. John asked me to talk today about this subject, the generous journey. And what a journey it's been for us at C3. We have, by God's grace and very strategic actions, built a generous church. We have. There's no doubt about it. That's part of our DNA. And what this generous journey coincided with was us building a church building, which had always been a goal. We've been in Cambridge for 25 years next April. It had always been our goal, but we had some battles along the way. But the whole of the building has actually only been completed now, just over a year. We phased it, and here's a picture of the building in Cambridge that's on a roundabout. That building indeed did cost us £7 million, and from the church, the community that meets in that place, we raised just on £5 million in order to complete that. Now, we didn't do that overnight. It took us a while, but we had continuous generosity, and nothing dipped in the midst of doing this. Our giving by way of core giving continued to go up. Our giving outside of ourselves continued to go up. The work we did in the community continued to go up. Everything just kept moving and still is to this day. Never has there been a hiccup in the last 5 years. And in this building, you'll see here just some photos of the rest of the building. You can move them forward. That's the outside of it. That's the coffee shop. How many of you know coffee? Very important. Well, at least in the front row, no one on the back row. But there we go. That's our auditorium. That's us in the midst of worship. That's why we built it. There's power in the name of Jesus. And the thing, oh, go back one. I don't want you to go to that one yet. That's ahead of time. That one there, just as we're in the midst of worship, I just want to say this. This building, ready for this? It won the best public service building in East Anglia 2016. It was up against buildings in Bury St. Edmunds, in Ipswich, and in Norwich, and we won! Sorry, guys. It was, for now, it was then put in to the best new church building UK 2016. You really need to be more impressed than you are. And I remember when we were in the finals of the best public service building, we were in King's College Chapel, or King's College, right next to the chapel, in our tuxedos. Me and the architect were down to the side of the stage when Amanda Holden, you know, the newsreader, she announced the winner. And when we won, I hugged our architect, and we did that kind of huggy thing that you do, and then we realized we're in our tuxedos. This isn't the time or place. And then we went to the finals for the Best Church Building Award 2016. Guess what? Thank you. We lost. We got beat by a Abbey in a place called Was. I've never heard of Was. It's in Yorkshire, W-A-S. Anyone ever heard of Was? No? Absolutely. Oh, someone has in the middle, so it does exist. Well done. And we lost to this little nun that went out and got the prize for her abbey. But it's all kingdom, isn't it? Yeah. Before I talk of some principles, and I really sense God speak this to me in preparing, I want to say something about your journey. This last week, Angie and I have been in Switzerland. We were speaking at a church there, and then we stayed on for a few days holiday. We were just outside Zurich, and I realized when we were there that it was our first time in Switzerland, but it wasn't our first invitation to Switzerland. A while back, I had an email come in from a pastor in Zurich who leads a large church over there. And this email came in at 12:27 one day, p.m. This is what he wrote. Hey, Steve, I hope you're doing very well. We had a great Sunday with new church visitors record behind us. Over 3,200 people. Amazing for us. And we planted a church in Rome in Italy and a church in Austria and Salzburg and Vienna, and more are coming. Then he writes, I asked you about pulpit exchange. For us, this is very important that we have young and fresh connections. I liked this guy. He says, I like your fire, your team, your spirit. He's a good guy. Your wife, he writes, will be speaking from Thursday, 30th October to Saturday, 1st of November in Zurich at the Ladies' Conference. I thought you could preach Sunday, the 2nd of November. You fly in with your wife Thursday. Friday, we play golf together. Friday night, you can preach to the young adults, 250 people. Saturday, we play golf together. Sunday, you preaching 4 times. What do you think? If this does not work, then let me know when it would be okay to go otherwise. I could come to your church, 2nd of February, 9th of February, 9th of March, 22nd of April. What do you think? Say hello to your wife and your amazing team, and see you soon. Be blessed. And I thought, I'm blessed. What an opportunity. I wanted to go to Switzerland. That was 12:27. 12:30, another email came in from him. Hey, Steve. Sorry, I mixed your name up with Steve Gamble. Sorry, this mail is not for you. Be blessed. Be blessed. I was 3 minutes ago. And now you've just ruined my opportunity. So I wrote back. That's fine. I don't play golf anyway. And he wrote back, God bless. I won't tell you his name. It begins with L and ends with E-O, but that's just a clue. I want to say this to you, Soul Church. God never mixes you up. To every individual sitting in the room, God knows your name. And God knows the name of this church. In fact, if we had time to do a study, we go to the book of Revelation right at the beginning. Jesus speaks to specific churches for specific reasons, specific issues. He knows their name. And he doesn't get them mixed up. God hasn't got you mixed up with some other church, because you've got your own story. You have your own history. You have your own destiny. And I can tell you today some principles of the journey, and I probably will throw in there a few stories of miracles that we saw in our journey. But you've got your own miracles. And your miracles are your miracles for you that God has ordained, and God's got plans for you. Your own journey. When we were on our journey, we had a song that we sang. The song I stole from a other preacher called Joseph Arlington. He's a singing preacher. And Joseph, I heard preach, and I thought, I'm going to take a little bit of that, and I'm going to take it back to my church. And we sang this time and again. My daughter, my 20-year-old daughter, is at Hillsong College in Australia at the moment. And she wrote to us a few months ago. She said, Dad, what's the rest of that song that we used to sing? Because she said, nobody knows it here. And I wrote back, I said, that's because I wrote it. Well, I stole it, to be honest, but I wrote it just for C3, and there isn't any more to it, Meg, than the bit we sing. But it was really important for us, and this was the song. Very simple. Ask for favor in the day of favor, and the day of favor is now. Ask for favor in the day of favor, and the day of favor is now. I'd just like you to sing along with me, if you wouldn't mind. Ask for favor in the day of favor, and the day of favor is... You got to do the hands, or it doesn't really... No, I doubt that's going to be on the next Hillsong album. But it says an awful lot, because it's really quoting Scripture. 2 Corinthians 6, verse 2 says this. I tell you, I love the way the Apostle Paul says, I tell you. I don't feel like there's a wagging finger, but there's an assertive finger. I tell you, this is for certain, guys. Ask for favor. I tell you, now is the time of God's favor. Now is the day of salvation. Sometimes we are so close up to things that we fail to see the miracle that's in front of our eyes. The building that we built was on a plot of land that we drove past week in and week out for years. You see, we hired a school. Anyone ever been there? Every Sunday, hiring a school. The teachers would complain of the mess it was left in, so we had to make sure, guys, we've got to leave this better. We started to leave them chocolates on the table every week. We made sure we left it better than we found it. We had trouble booking it 52 weeks of the year. We had to set it up every week. We were in a school, and we were driving past on the way to the school a site every single Sunday that we didn't know was our miracle provision. So if you go back on some of these photos, just go down to that site there. This is the back end of the building site that we bought. That there is the chapel. That's what you see on the next photo. The chapel is the back there. There's a cross there. That's, by the way, that's me before the beard went gray. All right? In case you want, not him. This is me here. That's what building programs sometimes do for people, or the lack of buying dye. So that's the other, that's the main chapel that was in the old building. If you go to the next photo, because I'm fascinated by what you're saying about your cross. We kept one thing from that building. You see that lintel there across the top? This building here was bought in 1920, or the land was, by some Christians. In 1930, they built. In 1960s, they added on. And eventually, the congregation dwindled to such an extent that they had to sell it. And we went past it every Sunday, and other churches hired it. So Cambridge Presbyterian Church were in there. There was a group called God's Joyful People. And you used to go past, and I hope there's no one from God's Joyful People, but they looked anything but as they came out. It was the most miserable-looking group of Christians you've ever set eyes on. It should have had God's miserable people. That might have been closer. And we used to drive past and feel all embarrassed. Oh, no, look at those people coming out. And the Presbyterians were coming out as well. Any ex-Presbyterian won't go there. And we never even thought about it. And then one day, so one day can change everything, this site suddenly came on the market. Now, I just want to remind you, you know it. I've seen the photos today. You've got 6 acres. It's a miracle provision. Your history is good, but your destiny is better. But you've got 6 acres because of faithful giving another generation, and you, like us, are reaping where another generation has sown. But you get to enjoy the miracle. And God's timing, when this place shut down and it became available, it's right opposite Sainsbury's. the largest supermarket in Cambridge. 34,000 people a week go to that supermarket. It's on a roundabout, and we are having a campaign to change the name of that roundabout from Sainsbury's roundabouts to the C3 roundabouts. It's the biggest free car park in town, and it's on our doorstep. If Sainsbury's hadn't have built there with their car park, we probably couldn't have got the planning permission we needed in order to go there. Ask for favor in the day of favor, and the day of favor is... Yeah, we're doing better. We're on to row 7 now with the hands by the end of this. The non-clapping section will be involved. We used to cringe as we went past, but now we realize it was our miracle provision. And you've got a miracle provision. And the down payment is there. We always used to say this. I loved a conversation we had just upstairs with John. We always used to say, hey, I can't tell you the exact timing when we're going to be cutting turf. I can't give you the date. But all I can tell you is, we will. I don't know when, but we will. And if I said that once, I said that 1,000 times, because we had some setbacks that crossed the way. But every setback, honestly, was turned for good. Every time. So let me just say a few things. Number one, this. When it comes to generosity, it's not all about money. It's not all about money. It's such a bigger subject than money. Generosity is fundamentally rooted in stewardship, because every single one of us have got something which we are responsible to steward. See, it is a lie, hear this, when people that don't have much say they can't be generous. Oh, yes, they can. And it's also a lie when someone might say about someone who's got a lot in some way, oh, well, they've got enough to be generous with. Generosity is never measured by how much you give. It's more measured by how much you have left after you've given. That needs to dawn on some of you. I've been to some of the poorest parts of the world. I went to a place in India where, honestly, it was foul. And they took us for dinner to a house. And they had one chicken. And they killed it while we were there to feed us. And I said, well, what have you got left? Oh, nothing. They were probably the most generous people I've ever met. God provided for them in miraculous ways, and we wanted to help, of course. So generosity, what we did in our journey, we made sure we talked about the breadth of generosity. So it has to do with your time. The city we live in, often people are quite time poor. So they want to use it strategically. But they can be very generous with it. Or it can be about the gifts that you've got. I thank God for some gifted people that gathered around us that gave their time free of charge in some of the areas we needed expertise. I was grateful. Generosity is never measured by what you have. It's measured by what you have left after you've given. So you can include this, can't it? It can include how people serve. You can serve with a generous spirit, or you can serve with a begrudging spirit. So we were in the United States a while back, and on our way out, we went to the checking in desk here in Heathrow. And the lady that was at the desk, while we're waiting, didn't even look up. She just had her head down, and she went, next. That was me and my wife. So we walked up. She didn't look up still. Bags. Yeah, we're checking in too. Put them on. Still hadn't looked up. Passports. Now she had to look up. They had no choice. So she looked up. I am convinced she snarled as she looked at my passport photograph. She looked at it again. And she just said, the gate will show on the screen when it's ready. Next. I thought, you don't want me there, and you don't want to be there. On the way back in the United States of America, We walked up to we were early. If I fly anywhere, I'm always early. We walked up. Before we'd even got to the desk, a guy comes out to me. Can I take your bag, sir? Are you priority boarding? Oh, I wish I was. He said, never mind. Come this way anyway. He took my bag. He put it on. He waited for us and said, go there and speak to this. The lady looked at us. She smiled. Have you had a good time? This was in Chicago. Have you had a good time in Chicago? Oh, we've loved it. What have you seen? She engaged us in conversation. It's like we were human beings. And then she had passports. She looked at mine. Bearing in mind, I had a dark beard and hair. And now it's white beard and none on the top. And she looked at me and she smiled and she said, wow, you've changed. And in my mind, I heard her say, you're better looking now. I prefer you now. You look handsome and wise. That was what I heard. She didn't say that much, but you got to play these games. And I said, thank you so much. And she said, come back again and visit us in Chicago. That was a generous spirit. The UK one, if I may say, was begrudging. It can do with time. We have lots of professionals in our church. We do a conference called GLS, Global Leadership Summit. It's in November. The rain, it was pouring down. And we reserved our car park for guests, the elderly, and disabled. And so we drove up, and there was a guy, I couldn't even see who it was. He had his hood up. It was torrential rain. But when it got there and he stopped me, he took his hood down, he smiled, and I knew exactly who it was then. And he said, sorry, sir. This area is reserved for guests. He knew who I was. Guests, the elderly. And then he looked at me and he said, but I think you class. And he laughed, and I laughed, and got out of the car and hit him. But I thought, he could be doing this. That guy is a local GP. He's more than a local GP. He trains other GPs in the area. He's an advisor. And he'd taken this day off from his holidays, it was a Friday, in order to stand outside in the pouring rain and welcome people with laughter and with a good attitude. Because generosity is an attitude. Generosity is attitudinal. It depends on your attitude. And this is what it says in Proverbs 11. Listen to this. The world of the generous gets larger and larger. The world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. The one who blesses others is abundantly blessed, and those who help others are helped. But that's not just about money. So we've got that? Now hear this. Point number 2. Money and your heart are inextricably linked. So although it's not all about money, it's not less than how we handle our money. I can't excuse stinginess and meanness and say, oh, well, I'm good with my time and I'm good with my talents. I've had some people say to me, oh, I don't give to the church because I give my time. Cop out. Because that reveals something of your heart. And unless you are all in every way, with the time that you have to steward, with the talents that you have to steward, and the money that you have to steward, if your heart isn't in it, if I haven't got your heart, I'm not sure I want those other things. Proverbs 4:23 says this, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. If we can keep our motives, our attitudes, our inner desires healthy, guess what? We'll be generous in all that we do. Listen to what Jesus said. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Where your treasure is. He didn't say, where your heart is, there your treasure is. He says, where your treasure is, there your heart is. Notice the way round it is. When we first got married in 1985, 20th of July, we bought our first house. It cost us £22,500. 3-bedroom semi in a place called Eastham on the Wirral, near Liverpool. I had never till that moment been interested in the property market. It didn't interest me. I lived with my mum and dad at that stage. I'd finished college and I was working and they paid the bills. Suddenly, every time I'm going past an estate agent's, I wonder what the house prices are in Kilburn Avenue now. We only bought it a week ago. Oh, look, because my treasure had gone into some property, and guess what? My heart, my affections, my attention followed in some way. I had a lady come to us in the middle of this building project. She said, my heart is not in this building project, so I'm not going to be giving. So I just said to her, let's pretend her name was Rebecca, because it was. I said, Rebecca, your heart will never be in it unless you give some money to it. Because your heart follows where your treasure is. Rebecca, if you're listening, forgive me. She's still with us, and we did get some money from her. So this is what we did. Here's some practices that we engaged in. And what we did is we made sure we were preaching. I'm preaching right now. We did teaching. Or we modeled this. And then we celebrated all the time. We just kept going around that circle. Let's preach it. Let's teach it. Practical, break it down. Let's model it. And let's celebrate. So here's just a few principles and a couple of stories attached to it. Number one, leaders go first. If I was to take you to our stewardship pastor in Cambridge right now, Rob Allen, check him out. And you to say to Rob, who is one of the most generous, consistent givers to the Vision Fund, he would say, Stephen Angie Campbell. Some of you are thinking, oh, he's up himself. I'm not the biggest earner. I can tell you some bigger people, bigger earners than us, and we've given more than them. Leaders go first. My heart is in the vision we describe as reaching and shaping a generation. And John said it so well earlier. The building has never been the vision. Oh, but it's been a great tool to aid us in the vision. And so the most consistent, generous givers are us. We learned it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. It's more blessed to give than it is to receive. They're the words of Jesus that the Apostle Paul talks about in the book of Acts. Our children, we've got 3 grown children, but I always remember Josh, our son, when he was 7, 8 years old. We were at our grandparents' house, and we'd gone between the 2 sets of grandparents. And if you know what it's like with grandparents, we're like this now with our number one, you spoil them rotten. And over Christmas, the kids had been so spoiled. And I just got tired of watching them consume everything that was in front of them. And I said, stop! We're going to give our gifts now. Because I said, it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. And the room went quiet. My 8-year-old son looked up at me and he said, that's in the Bible, Dad, isn't it? And I thought, that's my boy. And he said, they're the words of Jesus, Dad, aren't they? I said, that's right, son. That's my boy. And then he said, I'm not sure I agree. He is his mother's son. I said, well, here's my suggestion. Practice it and let the revelation follow the practice. This is me preaching to an 8-year-old. Just do it. Because the more you do it, can I say for us, over these last 5 years particularly, we've had more financial issues. My daughter's getting married next year. Hey, that's costly. We could have said, oh, let's pull back from our giving. We said, no. We've made a commitment. We announce the figure that we give, not in pounds and pence, but in percentages, every year to the church to say, look, we're in this. And we've been giving 23, 25% regularly, and most of that goes to the local church because we believe in it. We believe in it. We believe in its vision. Practice it and watch how the feeling, if you want a feeling, goes with the faith action of doing it. Oh, and let me say this. We are really comfortably off. I'm rich. I am. I'm rich. I've traveled the world, so have many of you. I know, I'm rich. I'm in the top 5%, so are most of you in the world. Hello? Check it out. I'm rich. So we decided, you know what, there are a few things we can live without. Because John said it, I want to say to you again, it's not about equal giving, but it is about equal sacrifice. So we changed our car 5 years ago. I usually change my car every 3 years. I changed it. Please don't judge me for this. Normally, I go for a Volkswagen. I'd chosen the one I want, and then there was a guy in the church, and he worked for Skoda. And he said to me, you can get the same but a higher spec if you buy a Skoda. So I drive a Skoda. So I've had to live with a bit of embarrassment in some ways for a while. I remember all the old jokes. They're good cars now, Skoda. Come on. They're Volkswagen by any other name. Only Skoda drivers say that, of course, but they are. And I've done 83,000 miles in that car now. Guess what? We don't normally do 83,000. We've just sacrificed a little bit. Oh, come on. I live in a 5-bedroom, 4-toileted house. Hello? I'm not suffering at all. We've got a kitchen that we want to change, don't we? I went on a bike ride from London to Paris. It was a money-raising thing. I don't like those kind of issues. I think we should just give. The money's in our pockets and bank balances. But I decided to motivate some of our guys, and I did this ride with them. We raised about £12,000, which wasn't bad. But while I was away, because I'd been talking to my wife about a new kitchen, she and the family all got together, and this Annie Sloan paint, any of you chalk paint, they painted the whole of the kitchen in a color that my wife liked, and I like. I like. It was a really good choice. It was a surprise. I came home from my bike ride, walked in, and the kitchen's totally transformed. Totally. So we've lived with that rather than change it and spend 10 or 12. We've put that into other things because our heart's in the vision. Hello. Is that really sacrifice? Is it? I'm saying it again because I'm boasting. I live in a 5-bedroom house with 4 toilets. It's amazing. We're the only 2 in it nowadays. Plenty of room. We can move beds every night if we want. We don't. Thirdly, this in relation to practice. Never give to a building fund. Never. Give to a vision. We never called our building pot a building pot or a building fund. It was always vision fund for us. Vision fund for us. And please, can I ask you, this kind of stuff, 21st century, is really important. Refuse to moan about how much this costs. Because these aren't toys, these are tools. So as if someone walks in and says, hey, I didn't know they could have digital screens like this in a church. It's a tool to reach people. So just don't go there. Just don't even waste your breath complaining. It's a tool. And tell as many stories like that as you can. We just built our building. And a woman walked in. It was about the 2nd or 3rd week, I think. She walked in the front. She came with another lady who'd just started coming. And mascara was all down her face. She was crying. I said to her, what's the matter? She said, my partner just committed suicide and I found him dead at the bottom of the stairs. My 2 children were with me. She looked so low. I said, what's your name? She said, Tanya. I said, do you believe in God? She looked me in the eye. She said, I don't know, but I'm seeking. And I was able to say to her, you're in the right place. Tanya came for 3 weeks on the run. The 3rd week, she gave her life to Jesus Christ. Tanya is one of the most engaged worshipers you'll ever find in a service. She leans in because she's been forgiven, like we all have, only we don't always realize it. She's been forgiven a lot, and those that are forgiven a lot love a lot. And she's a lover of Jesus, and it hasn't all been plain sailing and easy, but she's hanging in there. She put something I saw last night about the Daniel fast. She's committed. She's a believer. And I got up and I could tell you story after story. And I just said to the church, church, we built this building for Tanya. That's why we built it. Because people really matter. 2 last things in 57 seconds. Ask some big asks. Can I suggest to you the way to go? Say you need, I wrote this down, so I'll just read what I wrote down. I didn't know the exact figure you needed, so I guessed at 8 million. Say there are 1,200 adults here in the room across today. Lots of churches do this. They say, 1,200 into the 8 million is 6,666 each adult. If we could all give that over the next 2 or 3 years, we'll have the 8 million. Don't do it. Tell you why. Because 666 isn't a good number anyway. But apart from that, some of you, £6,666.66 may as well be $1 million. Because you haven't got it. But others of you, you've got loads more than that. And you can give more. So my suggestion, this is what we did, would say, hey, why don't 200 of us give 20 grand? Because 200 of you probably can across today. You probably can over the next year or two. You probably can. It may mean the kitchen goes. It may mean you don't have the car, but we're talking eternity here. It may mean you have to drive a Skoda, whatever you have to do. But you can probably find a way to give 20 grand this year and next year. 200 of you can do that. And the rest of us will find the other 4 million. Because that's half of it already covered. And the rest of us will do that. And I can only tell you, the way we raised 5 million was exactly that way. And I found this, that if one person gave 20 grand or 10 grand in one offering, if they could afford that once, lean in and smile at me, they could probably do it twice. Oh, and actually, quite a few of them could probably do it 3 times, because if they've got that kind of money available, then they're going to be able to do it multiple times. And so I just get up and ask them. Ask them. Because God's provided and you can steward. Our last million was found by a miracle provision. Because we met in another building, and the experts told me, this was our office space. It was a chapel that was built in 1896. And we got Queen's Counsel on it. And they said, you'll never own it. It's in an ancient trust. You can't own it, but you can use it and have exclusive use of it. Well, as soon as we built this, I thought, I know what the Queen's Counsel said, but I don't believe them. Because I think God's bigger. And I hadn't believed them for 25 years because they told us that when we first got there. So I said, can we look and see if we can sell our building, the other one now? And everyone looked at me and said, you're crazy. We don't own it. Oh, I said, no. Why don't we go to the Charity Commission and ask them, can we own it? And we went and we asked, and we did it all legally, got solicitors involved. And guess what? The day we moved into this other place was gifted to us, or the week, was gifted to us to own it. And then I said, now we own it, let's sell it. And everyone went, oh, but we probably can't sell it. There's a clause in it. No clause. And then they said, but what if this group wants to buy it, or that group wants to buy it? I won't name what the groups have been buying church buildings in Cambridge, but we didn't want them to buy it. So I said, I know a church that's planting. Why don't we go and ask them, would they like to buy our building, keep it as a church? Well, I approached them. They said, oh, we're a church plant. We haven't got any money. Then they rang me a few days later and they said, you know, you've approached us. Well, 3 weeks ago, a group of businessmen approached us and said, we'd like to buy you a house in this area of Cambridge called Trumpington for one of your workers. And they said, but we've got houses and workers. We don't need, and a house in that area is 500,000, even a little house. And the church said to these business guys, would you consider buying Alpha Terrace, as it's called, for us? I got to cut the story short. In weeks, months, we had in the bank £1 million as from them. And they said to us, you can stay in that building for the next year whilst you complete your building. And that enabled us to complete all our offices and upper floor. And the experts said, you'll never be able to do it. Well, here's my point. We serve a miracle-working God, and he can find a way. And that place was built in 1896, but the miracle was waiting for us in 2017 when we were able to do it, and we had the money in the bank. And now there's a church in there continuing all the witness we did and carrying on. It's all stayed in the kingdom. God's a miracle-working God. So I want to close with this. Let's never forget. The greatest miracle, of course, is a life that's far away from God, that's changed miraculously in a moment because of the cross of Jesus Christ. The cross still stands. The cross still stands. And in this place, and in the new building, there will be hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands in the generations to come. People like Tanya that I mentioned, whose lives will be transformed. And not simply for this life, though that's important, because some people are living a hell right now and they need help, but also for eternity. In Jesus' name. Would you just bow your heads, close your eyes with me? Lord, I just want to pray for this church. I pray that it will go from strength to strength. I pray for miraculous provision, but I pray that we'll all play our part as well. And that the fame of Jesus will be spread from here across the world and across this region. In your name I pray. Just keep our heads bowed, eyes closed before I take my seat. If you're in the room here and you're not a follower, you're not a lover, you're not sure that you belong to Jesus, you can do that today. Or you may have come here today and you've been a long way from God. Maybe once you were walking with God, but today you know you've come home. Then I'm going to pray a prayer that's a prayer of devotion, a prayer of commitment to Jesus. And you can use this prayer in your own heart and mind as we finish. And then I'm going to ask you, if you want to be involved in this prayer of commitment or recommitment to Jesus, just in a second to raise your hand. For this moment could change your life forever and certainly your eternity. So after 3, when I count 3, if you want to give your life to Jesus, you want to come home, just raise your hand so as I can include you in the prayer that I'm going to pray. After 3, 1, 2, 3. Just raise your hand right now. Anybody in the room here? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Father, I pray for those hands that are raised, that are giving their lives to you. In their heart they believe. Just say in your heart, I believe. I give my life to Jesus Christ. I ask you to forgive me and take me forward in this life with you. In your name I pray. Amen. Amen. Come on, let's give our God a round of applause again. He's good.
Thanks for joining with us today. We hope you felt inspired by the word that came through today.
That's right. And you know, if you really felt something in your heart, if you call Soul Church your spiritual home, and that means you're part of our online community, you're listening right now via podcast, iTunes, we really want you to prayerfully consider the part that you can play. Maybe you can help us, support us. So if you can, head to soulchurch.com, and we know that there is a miracle about to break out with our new building and blessing those who are in a greater need than ourselves. So thank you in advance for the part that you're going to play. God bless.